Hey gang, I am Joe Edelman and welcome to The Last Frame Live. Indeed, the longest running weekly photography live stream on YouTube. If you're watching live, you probably already know the drill. Leave me a note in the chat, let me know who you are and where you're watching from. And if you're not watching live, if you're watching the replay, no worries, you are still an important part of this process. Please drop a comment below the video so that I know you were here. Tonight, already live, we got Sam in St. Augustine, Florida. Ron is here from Thursday in Australia. Picture Effects is here from Hamburg, Germany. I got Ty here from New Jersey. Lynn is up in New York. We got people filtering in here, and my stream is running slow on my end. Sean just got in here from Montreal. All of you, thank you very much. So, got some big news to start out with tonight. Here we go. You are all aware, unless you're living under a rock, that camera technology is moving forward at an incredible pace. And let's face it, we give Sony a hard time, but at this point, camera companies are coming out with new gear like there's no tomorrow. And, our topic tonight is AI, and indeed a lot of this gear has AI. Well, Nikon, in probably one of the biggest announcements that they have had, honestly, in years, has announced a new AI camera. This is no joke. This is real. This is a real camera that we're talking about here from Petapixel. This is an AI camera that will detect when a cow is about to give birth. I have a feeling this camera is probably not going to sell nearly as well as the A7 or A8, whatever they're up to, but it's a new camera. And I promised you I would only report on big things that were happening in the industry. And that being said, we'll move right in to our photo quote of the week. This quote this week is actually from one of my favorite photographers, and this is actually one of my favorite living photographers, but this is a man that I looked up to him and his work when I was coming up through the ranks. I've always been in love with his work, but this quote in particular carries a really good lesson with it. The quote, "You are responsible for every part of your image, even the parts that you're not interested in." And this quote comes to us from Jay Maisel. So before I tell you a little bit about why this quote is such a big deal to me, let me go ahead and share the page that is on my website. The link is already in the description below the video. I am going to drop it also here into the chat for you so that you have that. Jay Maisel is a New York-based photographer who, he's all about color and just incredible color. So I encourage you, check it out. And I want you all to also be aware of some changes that I've made, some good changes to the photographers that you should study section on my website. We still have the quotes, the videos, the books, links to their website so you can see their images. I don't post their images on my website, obviously, because of copyright reasons, right? But I link directly to them. Many of these photographers that I'm encouraging you to study have Wikipedia pages, so you can also get information from Wikipedia. And for the living photographers, where applicable, I am now also linking directly to their socials. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube if they have it. So if you really want to go down the rabbit hole on these photographers, again, this is a selection of photographers that I am curating. I'm sharing quotes from them with you, and I'm providing you information that you can go and learn from them. And I don't mean learn YouTube style. I mean, listen to interviews, read about their careers, and really learn about what it takes to be a photographer who creates a body of work. So that being said, the reason why this quote, I chose to highlight this quote this week, It's really simple. I am not a big fan of rules. You've heard me say that probably many, many times if you've watched me more than once or seen me talk more than once. And when it comes to composition, rules in particular, when we start talking about that rule of thirds crap, and then we get into the Fibonacci spirals crap and all that stuff. Now I know, right out of the box, that just really irritates a lot of photographers that I say that. But here's the thing. Do your research. Be an independent thinker. All of those rules, do the research on how those rules came about. Do the research on why those rules exist. And I stand by my point. All of those rules will do for you, all they're going to do for you, is they are going to give you a predictable picture. Predictable. If everybody follows the same rules, your images are predictable, right? This quote from Jay Maisel is actually one of the greatest composition lessons that you could ever get. When you're shooting, you are responsible for everything in the frame. Everything. And I always use this analogy, which is not always politically correct in today's world, but unless there was a person standing with a gun to your head, threatening to pull the trigger if you didn't press the button, you do not have the right afterwards, after you've pressed the button, to make excuses. Well, I didn't see this, or I didn't see that, or, I really love this picture, but I wish that wasn't there. You should have dealt with it. You should have moved it. You should have moved yourself. You should have changed your composition, used a different lens, done whatever. But you're responsible for everything in the frame. And so that means when you're shooting, you are looking at your subject. You are looking at everything around your subject. You are looking all the way around the edges. Everything. Foreground, middle ground, background. Your responsibility. The average human being, because of science, cognitive psychology, we all suck at doing that. Literally. For a whole bunch of reasons. If you've ever seen any of my talks on creativity and the art of seeing, you've heard me talk about them. One of the biggest ones, if you ever want to Google this and have a little bit of fun, is called inattentional blindness. All of you have made this mistake. All of you have made this mistake where you photograph somebody, even if it was just a snapshot, but when you got home and looked at the picture, there was a pole or a mailbox or a tree growing out of their head. That's inattentional blindness, right? So one of the best things that you can do for your composition is to slow yourself down, really focus on the details and pay attention, and make sure that you are only including in your shot what belongs in the shot. No excuses. Excuses don't work. Excuses don't get results, right? You only include what belongs in the shot. So, as I mentioned, there's a link to Jay Maisel's website and all of his information. It is in the chat. It's also in the description below the video. I encourage you. This is an incredible photographer with an incredible history. Spend some time there. Read his bio, study his images, but be careful. You will learn things. And again, in case you haven't caught up with this whole quote thing, if you don't follow me on Facebook, Twitter, X, LinkedIn, Threads, even Blue Sky, Monday through Friday, I post a quote from a well-known photographer along with a link that is going to allow you to learn more about that photographer as well, of course, as see their work. Okay? And just a reminder, all of you, you're part of a growing global community of photographers in over 100 countries who tune in to watch The Last Frame every week. It would help a lot more people learn about The Last Frame if you could do me a solid, hit that thumbs up below the video. The more thumbs up, the more YouTube recommends the show to other photographers. Okay, so before we get into our AI discussion tonight, I've been really sloppy about getting the shoot breakdowns in the last couple of weeks. So let's do that first. That way I can't run out of time for that, because obviously any questions that you guys have are going to be really, really important. So the cover shot for tonight's program is this image that you see here. I just shared this out on Instagram today. It'll go up on Facebook later tonight. I actually just shot this one Monday, and I usually don't turn my images around that fast. But fortunately, this was one that just kind of came together very easily. I had all the pieces that I needed in the studio. The setup was pretty simple. The post-processing actually was super simple and really super quick. So I was able to turn it over fairly quickly. The goal, very simply, was to create something that was blue. My original plan for this particular session, I was going to go with blue and yellow, but when I say yellow, I was actually going to light my subject blue and then do a bright yellow background. And I realized pretty much as soon as I put the model on the set that the way that I had styled the shot between the leather jacket she had and the shiny, it's actually a metal collar piece that she's wearing, and the hat, I realized it just was not going to work at all. So in those situations, we have to solve problems, right? I will still go and do a yellow and blue theme, which I've been itching to do for a while, but I realized I need to make it more graphic and more simple, less detail, less accessories, definitely not a hat. Probably an interesting hairstyle is the way that I want to do that. So in this case, in that moment, I thought, okay, I'm going to go with all blue, and I'm going to make it kind of really deep and moody blue. So one of the things that the color blue is frequently associated with is bravery. Think about it. Most of our military uniforms use blue in the dress uniforms. Bravery, okay? And by the way, you can Google that kind of stuff on any color. Like anytime you have a concept and you're like, well, I wonder what colors would be good. Don't be afraid to tap into the psychology of emotions. It can help people connect with your images and see the images the way you want them to. So I knew that I wanted something that was going to be brave, kind of an adventurer type vibe. But since I was planning on a completely different direction, I had nothing beyond blue, beyond a gray background that I had set up, and because I was going to make it yellow originally, and this leather jacket, black metal collar piece, and the hat. And the hat's actually like a light suede color blue already. So I took a quick break. It took me about 5 minutes because what came into mind was, all right, I know that I have some PNG transparent overlay files in my archives that are sparkly lights, you know, kind of bokeh bits. And I thought, let me go ahead and access a few of those, and I might be able to find something that's going to work. So pretty quickly, I was able to find this image that I have here, which again, it's a .png file. And full disclosure, in fact, by next week, I'll share you a list of some of the places that I've used. This might surprise some of you where I get these PNG overlays, and I make no secret about it. There's no reason to lie about it. I get them on Etsy. A big part of the reason why I choose to get them on Etsy is because, I'm going to have to stop getting them on Etsy now that I say this, but not a lot of photographers know that you can get them on Etsy. And the ones that are on Etsy tend to be just a little bit different than all the ones that you find in some of the big stock photo sites or like Envato Marketplace or, you know, all the photographers that are online with all their ads and Instagram and that's selling you all their overlays and stuff. I don't want the same crap that everybody else is using. Right? So I had that file, so I thought, okay, great. That gives me the yellow. So I still got the blue and yellow theme. And you know, I will soften that yellow and play with that a little bit. That's cool. So I also had not set up my little smoke machine for that shoot. I thought, well, I don't really want to play with smoke because I had a set amount of time. But I thought it would be nice to have a little mist and a little texture. So I'm not going to lie, I'm still kind of obsessed with the smoke thing right now, right? But I didn't want to get the smoke machine out. I didn't want to have to shoot it that way with remote control or any of that. So I thought, fine, I have some fog overlays, which look like smoke. You can see in that middle image, it looks like smoke. So basically, those are the pieces that I decided in the studio, that's what I was going to build out the rest of the shot with. Super simple, right? So from a lighting standpoint, it's 3 Godox 8200 strobes. In fact, here, let's do the gear first. Shot it with a Sony a7 for the Tamron 70 to 180 at about 150 millimeter, f8, 250 to the second, 100. Those are my standard studio settings, which I don't vary from a lot, right? 3 Godox 8200s, the Photox Ronnie 2, the folding beauty dish, which somebody asked me about this in my community today. You know, did you use it as a beauty dish without the baffles and that? And interestingly enough, I never use this modifier as a beauty dish. I only use it as a softbox. They just call it a folding beauty dish. For me, this is my personal taste. It's not a right or wrong. If I want beauty dish lighting, it's going to come from the metal beauty dish. And even then, I usually put a sock on my beauty dish. For those of you that don't know what a sock is the diffuser that you put over the front of a beauty dish. So I rarely will use the beauty dish as bare metal, but yeah, if I'm looking for beauty dish lighting, I use an actual beauty dish. Otherwise, this is a softbox. And the reason why I love this particular softbox, again, it's 33 inches, so it's a nice size. It's not too big, it's not too small, and it's very shallow, which is really nice. Doesn't take, it's not a deep, big, massive, bulky box. The background was a Savage 27 Thunder Gray, because remember, I intended originally to make it yellow. I just didn't bother switching over to the black. You can change black, you can change blue, gray with gels, right? So that wasn't a big deal to just change the power settings on the strobes a little bit to get the same kind of intense blue that I wanted for the background. That was easy, right? All the rest of the stuff, you can read that there. You saw the lighting setup here. I've got a blue gel on my key light, which is lighting her face, and it's actually closer. You'll notice in a lot of the diagrams that you see that I post, I always have that white circle just for your reference. That's a 10-foot diameter circle to give you a sense of the amount of space that you need to do this. Most of my setups that I share with you guys, you could do them in your living room. You might have to move a coffee table out of the way, but you can do them in a small space. That's the point, right? But in this particular case, my key light is actually closer to the subject than I usually have my setups. Usually I have all my light stands around the border of that 10-foot diameter circle. But that's primarily because with the Godox 8200 and then a blue gel over it, that blue gel is knocking out about 1.5 stops to 2 stops of power. So, I could have gone up to a more powerful strobe like an AD300 and AD400, but why bother? Just bring the light a little bit closer. Period. Super simple. 2 lights in the background to give me the blue, and then on camera right, a foam board giving me a little bit of fill because I didn't want one whole half of her face to go dark. And I originally tried the shot, and I should have saved a copy of it for you. I'm sorry, but I originally tried the shot with a rim light on camera right. I used an orange rim light, and I loved the color combination of the blue, the orange rim light, knowing that I was going to add the yellow in the background. But the more that I was looking at this as I was doing some shots, the orange just became too much of a focal point. And believe me, I had it dialed way down. So it was a very subtle orange, but it was just too much of a focal point. It was taking attention away from her face because I don't have her looking straight at the camera. So I still want that connection where all the attention is going to go to her face, right? So finally, in the end, I decided, get rid of the rim light, take the orange out, put the foam board in, and brought it in really close just to create some fill so that I didn't have complete darkness on one side of the face. And there is the finished shot. Processing time, by the way, to do those overlays is literally about 15 minutes to clean everything up and make it look amazing. And it's really a pretty simple process. I know that stuff overwhelms some of you. And I know somebody's going to say, Joe, would you show us how to do it? I won't. I'll explain it to you. I'm not going to do a Photoshop demo because I'm not a Photoshop guy, not in terms of teaching and demos. Unmesh dinda. In fact, I will, by next week, I should have done this today. My bad. I will track down a couple of his tutorials that show you how to do those overlays. And I will share them with you during next week's show so that you can go and try it out. But hands down, if you're looking for a Photoshop instructor on YouTube, check out Unmesh Dinde. His channel name is Pix Imperfect. Best there is, by far. Okay. All right. So let's get into our topic tonight. As soon as I can find the button. There it is. All right. So each week, usually Tuesday, sometimes Wednesday, I wake up and think to myself, okay, what am I going to do for the last frame this week? And I have a routine. I mean, if something's already in my mind, that's a good week. It's like, great. I've got my topic. I'm ready to go. Otherwise, I will go and I will check out the photography blogs. I look at Petapixel. I look at DIYphotography.net. I look at F-stoppers, sometimes Photo Focus, and I'll see what people are talking about, what's going on. And a lot of times that just makes me angry because there's a lot of stupid stuff on those blogs. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of good stuff too. But there's also a lot of stupid stuff that is not helping anybody. And I don't want to, do every topic every week just complaining about things, right? And other times, it gives me an idea. So this week, I had a crazy idea. I was working on some articles the other night, and I do a lot of my research now using AI. In fact, if we have time, I'll actually explain to you how I do that when we're done. But I have seen a couple articles in the last week or so, and also a bunch of posts on social media, photographers complaining about how AI is going to destroy photography and how AI is not photography, and the list goes on and on and on. And it's all a bunch of complaining. I complain just like anybody else does, but I have a firm policy. Any idiot can point out a problem. If you can't offer something that's going to move the conversation forward, some kind of a solution or an idea, then shut up. It's that simple. So you guys hear me tackle a lot of topics that I feel are problems, are things that are wrong that need to be improved. But every single time, I'm always proposing a way to move it forward. That being said, I thought it would be interesting to talk about AI and the impact that it's having on photography, but instead of looking at it from a photographer standpoint, because we already know photographers kind of fall into two camps, right? For the most part. There are those that think AI is really cool and it has potential for any number of reasons. And then there are those that think AI is a bunch of crap and it's going to ruin photography and it's making it impossible for photographers to earn money, yada, yada, yada. So I thought, you know what? AI is actually, and believe me, it's improving on a weekly basis, but it is actually very impressive. And one of the things that I've learned in the last couple of months is that if you really learn how to do prompts, you can actually have very intelligent conversations with AI. And I don't mean like something you see in a sci-fi movie, right? I mean understanding that, AI is basically drawing from a database, but it has the ability to do much more research much faster than I do as a human. So I thought, let's ask AI how it feels about the threats to photography and what those threats are and what those challenges are. So here's how things went. And I'm actually going to try and do some of this in real time because I've already done it with ChatGPT. Every now and then ChatGPT will call you out if you ask it the same things more than once. So I have it all stored, but we'll see if we can get it to give us some answers in real time here. So I started out, the first question I asked, do you, meaning the AI, ChatGPT 4, do you think that AI is a threat to photography? And even if you don't think it's a threat, can you discuss why some photographers may or should feel threatened by this influx of AI. So it actually brought back some really interesting answers. So first of all, it says, it's a complex and multifaceted question. Here are some things to consider. Why some photographers may feel threatened. Automation of skills, because indeed, AI can automate certain aspects of photography, things like editing, composition, which I think what it's referring to is compositing, like I was talking about, and even subject selection, which is very, very true. Think of like the Google Pixel phone, where you photograph a group of people, and it's going to find each of the subjects, and it's going to make sure you have the best facial expression from them, right? Goes on to say this could make some skills of professional photographers less unique or less in demand, especially if we think about editing and some of the compositing tools and that type of thing. Very realistic answer. Mass production of images. This is one that you hear photographers complaining about quite a bit. AI can generate high volumes of images quickly and cheaply. This could potentially saturate the market with imagery, making it harder for photographers to compete or maintain the value of their work. Yeah, so when we talk about supply and demand, which is at the key of every business, I don't care what your services are or what your products are, supply and demand is a big part of what drives things. It is a challenge where already we are seeing a lot of companies go to AI to produce images. On one hand, AI can't do things quite as well as a photographer can when we talk about the reality, the realistic aspects of images. An AI image still has a certain amount of an AI feel to it. That will change, right? So there is that potential that, yes, there are going to be some categories from a money-making standpoint, some categories of photography that are going to kind of fall by the wayside in favor of AI in order to lower costs for those companies. So yeah, there's a threat there. Number 3 is quality and creativity. Advanced AI systems are increasingly capable of producing high-quality images that can mimic different styles and aesthetics. This could challenge the notion of creativity and uniqueness. And the key word there is challenge. So I agree with, my personal feelings are, I agree with that statement. If we look a year or 2 or 5 down the road, it's not there yet. But boy, is it coming, right? And again, the challenge here is creativity and uniqueness, because that is how photographers who want to make money will survive. Because the best part of it is the AI is a long way away from being autonomous, right? Meaning it's looking backwards. It's looking at databases of information, and it's pulling information from them and compiling it to give it to you, whether it's creating an image or whether it's creating words. It's not forward thinking yet, okay? So we've got a long way to go before it's able to, create. And then, of course, the economic impact, we've already really talked about that in the first 3. And then it says why AI might not be a threat. First things first, and this is the biggest one, in my opinion, the human element. Photography is not just about capturing an image, it is also about the photographer's vision, perspective, and here's the big one, interaction with the subject. And by the way, if you're a landscape photographer, this still applies. Not so much the interaction with your subject, but the interaction with the people that you want to care about your pictures. So whether that's people on social media, whether that's a person that you're selling the image to, that's the interaction, right? The human elements are difficult for AI to replicate. This is the AI admitting this, and it's right. Artistic merit. While AI can create impressive images, there is still a strong argument for the artistic merit and authenticity of human creative works. The story, context, and intention behind a photograph often holds as much value as the image itself. You guys have heard me say that time and time again when I talk about the fact that if you go to Google and you do a Google search for iconic photographs and then click on the Images tab, you'll recognize most of the photographs that come up. They are images that have stood the test of time, that we consider to be iconic, amazing, incredible images. But now as photographers, I want you to look at those images closely, and I want you to notice how many of them don't follow composition rules? How many of them are poorly exposed? How many of them are not tack sharp? How many of them are really lacking in contrast, are really flat in color? But yet, we consider these images to be timeless. Why is that? It is because of the story, the context, and the intention behind the photograph. That's the important piece with photography. Number 3, specialized fields. Certain types of photography, like photojournalism or documentary photography, rely heavily on the presence and the perspective of the photographer. These fields are much less likely to be threatened by AI. I completely agree. And then number 4, complementary use. Many photographers may find AI tools useful as complementary aids in their workflow for tasks such as editing or organizing photos, rather than as replacements for their skills. I'm all in on that. I'm all in on that. What it didn't talk about here, in fact, I asked in the poll early on, let me just see what the poll numbers are here. I didn't get to check them right before we came on. So the poll that I asked you guys to fill out, 60% of you said no. Let me see here. I am not seeing all the answers. Whoops. I'm still not seeing all the answers. Do me a favor, guys. If you are here watching, type in for me how many yeses there are. What's the percentage of yeses on the poll? I literally cannot get it to show on my screen right now. But go ahead and type that in. So part of the reason why I asked that question is for all of you who said no, that you don't use AI or any kind of AI. Tai Chi, 41% yes. Okay, cool. Eric, thank you, guys. Here's the challenge. You're all wrong. You're all using AI. Every one of your cameras has features in it that are based on AI technology, and you're using it. In fact, if you have a camera, which you probably do, that has eye tracking autofocus in it, you're using AI. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Ooh. You've been using AI, right? That's the beauty of it. We've actually had AI features and tools in photography longer than we've been hearing the phrase AI, right? That's a fact. It just is. Now, look, that doesn't mean that there are some aspects of AI that we should be worried about, some aspects of AI that aren't ready for prime time. Yeah. But part of the reason for having this conversation is realize that, number one, AI is not the problem. AI is not the threat. In my opinion, the threat is people. People are idiots, right? There will be people that will abuse AI. There will be people that will take advantage of it. There will be people that use it inappropriately. Just pay attention to what's going to happen in the next 10 months as we lead up to our election in this country. You're going to hear about AI problems on social media and the news. Mark my words, it'll be a big story at some point in the next 9 months because some major news outlet like a CNN or a Fox, one of the big ones, is going to wind up airing images generated by AI, and they're going to present them as real because they're going to get duped. You know it's going to happen, right? It's inevitably going to happen. That doesn't make AI bad. It just means that in order for us to have these great things that AI can give us, like the editing tools and all that other stuff, not to mention all these features in our cameras, in order to get that, it's also going to create some problems. It's going to create opportunities for people that are jerks. So we have to solve those problems. But AI is not the bad thing. AI is good. And even beyond the photography world, there are so many implications in AI. Even on Google, if I want to search for something at this point, I don't type into Google search. That's incredibly inefficient. I ask Google Bard the question. That's Google's AI. If I ask Google Bard the question, it's going to search the entire internet, which it's already done. It's in its database. But it's looking at the entire internet, and it's bringing me back the answer to my question as an answer so that I have the ability to understand the information I want, and then it will actually point me to the resources that it used to give me that information. If I type my question into the search, I get back hundreds of thousands, if not millions of search results, and I have to click and read and click and look at the ads and get past the ads and then click and scroll and do all that stuff. It takes me longer to get the information. Now, does AI like Google Bard or ChatGPT, which I'm using, does it make mistakes? Sure, it does. In fact, if you notice down at the very bottom of the screen, I know it's small type on your end, but it says ChatGPT can make mistakes. Consider checking important information. I still check the information it gives me, but if I'm looking to get a general understanding of something, using the AI is going to be so much faster and actually more detailed. And then if it's something that's important, yes, I've got to go and confirm those sources, right? So I took this conversation further, and again, I had actually done this a little bit earlier just to test how it was going to go out. So where am I at time-wise? We're doing okay, but I'm gonna read you the answers it's already given me instead of doing them again. So what I asked it next, which is kind of the question that's on our cover shot tonight, is based on your depth of knowledge, what do you consider to be the biggest challenges facing photographers today? And it comes back with an incredibly intelligent answer. The biggest challenge facing photographers today is likely the balance between technological advancement and maintaining artistic integrity. It's kind of hard to argue with that. I think that's spot on. Spot on, right? So, number one, and these are really great topics. These are the things that you see photographers stressing about. But yet AI is going to help give us some really logical solutions. So follow along. Digital proliferation and oversaturation. ChatGPT sometimes gets a little wordy. It likes colorful words. In the age of smartphones and social media, everyone can be a photographer. Gosh, where have we heard that before, right? This has led to an oversaturation of images, making it harder for professional photographers to stand out and maintain the value of their work. I completely agree. Now, I don't see that as an impossible challenge. I think there's a lot of easy ways to do it. And I actually think it's a good thing in the long run. We'll get to that, okay? Number two, rapid technological changes. The constant evolution of camera technology, software, and platforms, social media, means photographers must continuously adapt and learn. Staying updated with technology while also mastering the art, in other words, actually doing it and practicing, not watching it on YouTube, it can be demanding. And yes, it can. There's no argument there, right? Number three, economic and market pressures. The digital age has transformed the way photographs are monetized. The shift towards online content and the abundance of free images have impacted traditional revenue streams for photographers. Absolutely. There's another piece to that economic pressure. Photography, while it is available to more people today because of things like, smartphones and stuff like that, for those that are serious about photography and maybe who want to do it professionally or even just want to do it at a better quality level with professional type gear, it's much more expensive. Much more expensive. The reason being, we are still in the early phases. We are only 24 years into the digital revolution. We're only in the second generation of cameras for photographers, mirrorless cameras, digital mirrorless cameras. As a result, the technology is much more expensive than it was back in the film days, where film cameras for decades had been making small incremental growth, and hence the cost was small and incremental, right? So, and then the fourth one it gives us, artistic integrity versus commercial success. Balancing creative expression with the demands of a market-driven industry is a significant challenge. Here's the key sentence, and again, this is AI, and it's incredibly intelligent. Photographers often struggle to maintain their unique voice while catering to client needs or popular trends. You hear me talk about trends all the time. Following a trend is a choice to get lost in the crowd. Following a trend is a choice to have more competition. That is a choice you're making. Nobody's making you do that. No one is making you do that. And don't tell me, well, your clients make you do that. Because that's the one thing where I do disagree with ChatGPT here. Clients may request a trend. If that's me, and they've requested that trend of me, They're not my client. I'm not their photographer. I'm not going to chase the trend. As I've explained many, many times, where there's a trend over here, I'm over here. Let's see, right about there, okay? I'm not the best ever, but I'm me. And I'll stand out for being me. I don't need thousands or millions to follow me or say that I'm great or hire me or put money in my pocket. I need the few who appreciate what I do and see the value in it. And it's the same for you, okay? Environmental and ethical concerns. This one kind of sort of, I'm not so sure about this, but it says, in an era of heightened environmental awareness, the impact of photography, especially in sensitive or culturally significant locations, raises ethical considerations. I don't think that's top of list for most photographers. And then number 7, which is actually an important one, especially with, I was going to say younger photographers, but that's BS with all photographers. Mental health and burnout. The pressure to constantly produce new and engaging content, especially in a freelance or competitive field, can lead to burnout and mental health issues. It can. And I don't mean to sound unsympathetic to that, but I think part of the problem there is when photographers are dealing with that stress, they're making a choice to deal with that stress. They simply are. And follow along. I'll explain a little bit more. So I thought that was a great set of answers that it gave me. So I asked it another question. Since I've been shooting for so long, I said, hey, can you give me a comparison of these challenges compared to the photographers in the 1980s? And highlight the things that are maybe better or worse for each time period. And really what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to see okay, how far down the rabbit hole can I go and have this AI actually give me intelligent information, things to think about. Because what I find, for me, one of the greatest things about conversing with AI, if I ask it good questions, it's going to bring me back things that I would have never considered. Right? So, comes back, and of course it starts with digital proliferation and oversaturation. In the 1980s, the barrier to entry was higher in photography because the cost of equipment, mainly film, leading to fewer photographers. This allowed professionals to stand out more easily. It did. On the flip side of that, I will say in the 1980s, though, we didn't have social media to help us stand out, but there were fewer professional photographers. Today, with digital technology, photography is more accessible, leading to massive increase in the number of images and photographers, which makes it more challenging for photographers to distinguish themselves. We already mentioned that. Rapid technological changes. I mentioned this one a minute ago. In the 1980s, technological changes, were less rapid. And film photography required a mastery of a relatively stable set of skills and equipment. Very true. Once you learned it, you knew it, and that was it. It was done, right? Today, and what that did is it allowed you to focus on business and creativity. And if you weren't in business, you focus entirely on creativity. That's what was great about it. Today, digital technology evolves quickly, requiring constant learning and adaptation, which can be both a challenge and an opportunity for photographers. If you are quick to jump on something like that and get ahead of the curve and master it, that can be tremendously beneficial. There we go. Okay. Economic and market pressures, we've kind of touched on these. In the 1980s, there wasn't as much competition, so photographers had a clear path to, how do you make money? Today, between stock and social media and all kinds of other, influences, indeed, it's a little bit more challenging because there are more people trying to dip into that pond. The pond hasn't really grown as much as the number of photographers has grown. Number 4, artistic integrity versus commercial success. And this is one that I've definitely experienced. In the 1980s, there was a much clearer distinction between commercial and artistic photography. Photographers often had to kind of choose between, one or the other. Today, the lines between commercial and artistic are honestly very blurred, offering more creative freedom, but it also makes things a little bit more complicated if you just want to express yourself artistically. In large part, too, because there are a lot of things that artists would do frequently. An artist's work, it's designed to make people think. It's designed to make people feel something. It's designed to get a reaction. In today's world, we have to be a lot more careful with that, and we have to be a lot more sensitive with that. So it almost, in a way, I don't want to call it censorship, but it puts constraints on an artist who wants to be that kind of artist. It is going to be provocative with their work, okay? Intellectual property rights. This is a big one. In the 1980s, copyright infringement was much less common because it was a lot harder to copy things and distribute things, period, right? Now, digital images can be copied super easy with or without permission, and it makes it much more challenging to protect your intellectual property rights. Even if you've paid the money to file a copyright, it's still a lot harder to track all that down and to, go through the process. And yes, there are companies out there that assist you in that process, like Pixie, Pixsy, but you pay a premium for those services. It's expensive. So if you're not making money from your photography, they're kind of, prohibitive. The environmental and ethical ones, again, I don't buy too much into that. 1980s, obviously, there wasn't a lot of pressure for, constant pace of work. Things were slower. Things were more deliberate. There was no social media. Today, it's that relentless demand for content and the influence of social media, which indeed, it can be very stressful and it can cause burnout. So I was curious, and I asked ChatGPT, do you think that many of those challenges that you mentioned for today's photographers are not really challenges, but they're choices? In other words, is it necessary for photographers to participate in social media? And if a photographer is creating truly unique work, do they face the same kind of competition from oversaturation? So ChatGPT says that the question touches on a crucial aspect of modern photography, the distinction between inherent challenges and choices. So it goes through the same list again. Participation in social media, the choice. Engaging with social media, it is a choice, right? It simply is. Even if you want to be in business, using social media is a choice. Not every photographer out there who's making money, big money, is using social media. They're just not. Some photographers achieve success without heavily relying on those platforms. They might use alternative marketing strategies like word of mouth, networking, galleries, or other channels. And other channels would be things like mailing lists, old school stuff, right? So the consideration is, while social media can offer significant exposure, significant opportunities to connect with a broader audience, it can be beneficial for photographers or for those that are looking to expand their reach. So how do you decide? How do you know if you should be in the first group or the second group? Well, one, if you're trying to make money, that's going to influence your decision dramatically. If you're just trying to get followers because you want to feel good about the fact that there's a bunch of people follow you, well, then you're in the second camp. You're going for social media, right? But the other factor is, regardless of which way you go, you have to know who your audience is. So again, this applies to making money or not making money. Who's your audience? And when I say who's your audience, I should say, let me rephrase that. Who do you want your audience to be? What does your ideal client look like? What does your ideal follower look like? And where are these people? Where do these people hang out? Where do these people communicate? Where do they get their information, etc.? That's where you need to participate. And that may not always be social media, okay? Unique work and competition. So ChatGPT tells us choice and perspective. Creating unique work is a choice that can set a photographer apart from the competition. Absolutely. The best way to not have competition is don't compete. Do something unique. That's the way. Photographers who develop a distinctive style or niche may find they face less competition. So it goes on for the consideration, even with unique work, the overall market is still saturated. A unique style doesn't guarantee visibility in a crowded market, but it can create a loyal following and reduce direct competition. So, and we're down to about 10 minutes or so here, and I want to make sure I can do some Q&A. Hopefully you get my point. And there's a couple things here. Number one, all of you are using AI, even if you said you don't. So if you are a photographer that's scared by AI, threatened by AI, any of those things, here's my advice, sincere advice. Like I'm not trying to bully anyone. Take a deep breath and learn a little bit more about it. You don't have to spend tons of time. You don't have to go down the rabbit hole. But again, and you guys hear me say this all the time, don't put your head in the sand. Don't become a dinosaur, right? Every camera in the market today has AI in it. Most cameras for the last 8 or 9 years have had some kind of AI technology in them. And the percentage of AI technology is only going to grow, and it's going to continue getting better. I see quite a few people in the chat have been saying that they use the AI applications in Photoshop or, post-processing and that kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, my personal opinion is you're foolish if you're not trying them. Because the irony of it is once you try them, you're going to realize these things are really pretty freaking amazing. I noticed Chibuzo said, well, I tried something a couple of times. Yeah, you're not necessarily going to use AI all the time. I don't use AI all the time. But if you think about it, a lot of what people are doing with AI is the same end result as some of what I've been doing with compositing for years, except I was doing it, not the computer. So am I experimenting with AI to see, well, how much of that time-consuming compositing work can I get AI to do to save me time? Oh, heck yes, I'm experimenting with that. Now, for me personally, am I willing to give up the creative control or even just the creative process to AI? No, because that's what I love about photography. But any place where AI is going to give me time back, meaning it's going to streamline my workflow, or in the case of cameras, it's going to allow me to have a better hit rate, allow me to generate higher quality images more consistently. Even the fact that I'm getting older, I struggle with my eyes at this point, which for a photographer, that's not a good thing. If it wasn't for autofocus, I would probably no longer be a photographer, simply because, yes, I can focus manually, but nowhere near as fast as I could when I was in my 20s and shooting sports with manual focus lenses. I'd never be able to do that now. So for me, that's where I look to embrace it. I look to make use of it. But even with things like ChatGPT and Google Bard, I would encourage you, especially those of you that are looking to run a business, I would encourage you to pay attention to how these tools work and what they can do for you. And honestly, one of the simplest things to do is just start out and literally have a conversation with it, right? And, don't ask it like a broad question, but whatever the question is, try and give it some details. And you'll be amazed at how these things will respond. They're not perfect. They're not 100% correct. So I'm not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that you trust them in that regard, but they can give you a great starting point to go and look for information and find information to be able to confirm. And actually, for me, they save me a ton of time. Even when I'm going to teach a lesson or write an article, I will go to ChatGPT and I'll ask it to create me an outline, because I know what I want to write. And I always start, when I start an article, I start a video, I create an outline. What I found is by going to AI after I've created my outline and asking it to do the same thing, it always comes back with a couple things that I had overlooked. Things that are actually valuable, things that are worth talking about and worth mentioning, that are going to provide more value in my presentation if I give my perspective on those things. So I'm not taking the content or whatever AI tells me, but I'm using it to prompt my thought process to keep me more organized and to make sure that I'm providing more value to my clients. But even from the standpoint of running businesses, you can get AI to help you write things for your website. You can get AI to help you create forms, and the list goes on and on and on. I mean, it's almost endless. Okay. In fact, there we go. St. John Creative says using AI to create TikToks and shorts from long videos. Yeah. I mean, there's tons of opportunities there. Tons. So again, something for you to think about. Don't write it off. Don't write it off as evil. AI is not evil. People are evil. Just are, right? And not all people, but yeah, there's going to be people that are going to abuse it. It really does provide a lot of opportunity, even a lot of creative opportunity for all of us. It's all a matter of how much you're willing to adapt and adopt and learn. For me, the one thing I will say, I say it every time we have these kind of conversations, I'm a big believer in continually learning. The day that I stop learning is the day that I'm probably going to, sell all my camera gear and give it up, because what's the point, right? I intend to be a lifelong learner because I find the world around me and I find people around me to be fascinating, and they're constantly changing. And so I want to learn about that. I want to learn about all of it. And right now, I think it's just an incredible time with photography to keep learning. So that being said, I want to scroll back up here. I don't know that I actually saw a whole bunch of questions, but we do have some interesting little tidbits here. So let's just go through those. Eric mentions he's using AI to make his compositing more interesting with elements that he can never come up with in real life, but never losing focus of the main photo idea. In fact, I know a lot of photographers, even headshot photographers, that do business headshots that are, shooting the headshots on a solid color background and then using AI to create 4 or 5 business-looking backgrounds, so that they can very easily give the subject 5 different variations of the headshot that they look like, with seconds of extra work, right? If you've done your job well in a business headshot, you don't have flyaway hairs and all kind of craziness. So it's super easy to in today's world, super easy to mask the subject, place them on a clean layer, and then drop these AI backgrounds in. And the cool part of it is most AI yet won't generate images at a resolution that matches your camera, but it's a background. So you drop that background in, and you want it to be soft and out of focus anyway, and you're going to stretch it to this size, which might pixelate it, and then you're going to Gaussian blur it, and it's going to look perfect, absolutely perfect. So yeah, there's lots of issues that, or lots of opportunities there to be able to use it. Kevin's mentioning he uses AI to fix or remove objects. Yep. Jeffrey mentions he's using the AI applications in Photoshop. Yeah, which I think they're amazing. Let's see. JD Strobe is, that's news to you about cameras having AI. Yeah, they all do. He is using eye tracking and never considered he's using AI. Yep, that's a computer. In fact, the first camera company, another company that's actually brings a lot of firsts to our industry, but they tend to be the kicking post, is Olympus. When I was an Olympus ambassador, I was the one that did the launch videos for Olympus and did all the launch events. Well, my video was at the launch events. I was only at some of the events, but for the EM1X, which was the first camera for any brand brought to market that used what is considered current AI. In fact, used the term AI in its marketing. That was the EM1X. The AI was the focus tracking for birds, trains, and cars, race cars. Okay, that was the AI. But yeah, all eye tracking autofocus is AI. I'd be willing to bet that image stabilization actually even qualifies as AI technology, right? So let's see. TC, Portrait Pro, consider AI. Yeah, Portrait Pro actually has got some AI features in it for sure. I have a love-hate relationship with Portrait Pro. I own it. I do use it from time to time. I really do like some of the reshaping capabilities that it has. Its ability to move eyes if the eyes are slightly crossed. So there are nice features to it. I don't use it for a full workflow in an image ever. I'm not afraid to use multiple softwares to create an image. I'll use whatever it takes. So I'm pretty much always working in Photoshop for my base work, but there are times where I will go into Luminar Neo for some of the features that it has available. I'll go into Portrait Pro. There's another plugin that I like to use from time to time for skin, which is called Imagenomics. I think they're up to version 4. I use that occasionally, not as much as I used to, because now I have those retouch plugins that I shared with you a couple months back. But yeah, I definitely use multiple softwares when I'm processing and creating images. Ty mentioned uses mostly the Photoshop tools, generative fill, that's a big one. Picture effects, AI masking for portraits in Lightroom, yep. And I think you'll see, even with Lightroom, I think you'll see a lot more AI tools and generative AI tools, because definitely it seems like the big push in photography software, especially processing right now, is the generative tools, which are going to help us create things that aren't there, which is kind of cool, right? So there you have it, gang. Something to think about. But we are out of time. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you found some value in this conversation, and I do sincerely. I hope you'll give it some thought and keep your mind open to how you can potentially benefit from this technology. Maybe not today, and certainly you don't have to change anything you're doing today. You don't have to go out and spend any money today, right? Just pay attention to what's coming. So next week, more cool stuff, and of course, another shoot breakdown along with the last frame Q&A. If you can't make it to the show next week, leave your question in the comment below the video, and I will do my best to answer it next week. And hey, if you haven't done so yet, please, little thumbs up, helps more people find out about the show. But remember, you don't get back the days that you waste. So go pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot, it's your next shot. Adios, gang.